Hey friends, Ari Koinuma here. Thanks for tuning in. So today's video is going to be more like a life coaching type content, and in fact if you are followers of my channel, I like to tell you that I am going to start mixing in more of that life coaching, personal development type content mixed into my channel, as well as obviously my music stuff. Because music and life are two of my passions, and I just got to a point where I'm like, I really want my channel to have both in there. And when I think about the kind of things that I like to discuss when it comes to life, it contains such big and important issues that while I'm passionate about making music and helping other people make music, these life topics are sort of, such worthy, important, meaty conversations that I'm like, I want to do this, right? So I hope you're hanging with me. If you're only here for music, this might not be too interesting. You're welcome to sign off, but here we go. So what I'm going to share with you today is the basics of what I understood from this book. It's called The Presence Process by Michael Brown, and this book changed my life. I read it about 5 years ago, prompted by my coach Tom Volker, and it really changed my life in that it gave me some key insights about how our mind and body works, so that it then enabled me to basically work through and overcome obstacles and inner blocks that I had that I previously could not get through. He doesn't like to use the words like healing and purging, because he feels that what you should do is in life is to integrate all the experiences so it becomes part of you, which I do agree with. I'm going to try to sort of use appropriate words, maybe not necessarily his words, because I think his words are so out there, so ahead of how we think of things usually, that I found this book really dense and hard to read, although obviously very worthwhile. I'm going to try to balance out between using his words and using mine, try to strike the right balance between his intent and where I think I was at and where a lot of people might be. So the heart of this insight that I'm about to share with you is stuck feelings. And I might use words like emotions and stuff, it means the same thing. So this applies to how in life we seem to have patterns, undesirable patterns, like you might find yourself in stressful situations, undesirable jobs, terrible romantic relationships, can't grow financially. That kind of patterns always torment and make us struggle in life. And then there are things like mental health issues, depression, anxiety, fear, not being able to relax, low self-esteem. All these things are rooted in stuck feelings. And when you learn how to deal with, you use his words, how to integrate, right? I might use words like process, stuck feelings. You are able to really get at all these issues at the very root, and you are really able to move through them. And I can tell you my personal experience that that's really definitely happened in the last few years for me, and I'm just thrilled with where I am now compared to where I used to be, and I just feel really passionate about sharing what I learned. So let's go back to the beginning, and let's think of a baby, right? You start your life as a baby, and when you are very little, you don't have any abilities to control your feelings, right? So as a baby, you smile when you're happy, and you cry when you're hungry or in discomfort, cold or hot or whatever the case might be, in pain, right? You cry. And there's no holding back those reactions. And the other thing about babies is that they have no filter, right? They absorb everything and unconditionally, right? So if you're parents, be careful what you say around young children, and actually it is very important you take good care of yourself so you can stay in good mood, good frame of mind around little children, because they are constantly absorbing whatever you're saying them and all the moods and feelings that you are having at the moment. So as babies, we couldn't help but absorb what was in our little world, mostly from our parents, right? But just as a family in general, in the household where you grew up in. And whatever feelings that you got, you just kind of smile through them or cry through them, whatever, right? Like if you watch a little child throw a tantrum, and if you allow him or her to just have at it, right? Just say, yeah, go do it. Throw a tantrum, cry, swing your arms around and wail and make noise and do whatever it takes to just stay in the moment and just have the tantrum, right? After a while, you'll notice that the child will be done throwing the tantrum, and you know what happens after that? She starts acting like nothing happened. So the key to move on past whatever in life is to feel all the feelings that got generated from whatever happened. But there are times in life when the event generates so much emotions that you can't really process it all in a single sitting. And built into a psyche is this fallback mechanism to say, all right, so let's just say, this is a baby, right? And a baby has this tremendous amount of feelings, or young child, right? Yeah, and whether and a lot of times it's uncomfortable feelings, things like shame, disappointment, letdown, anger, grief, those things, right? There's just whatever happened, and you can't always judge based on whatever the event is, because sometimes a benign event may seem like a huge deal to a child, and so on and so forth. In fact, it often is, right? You can't discount and say, oh, you shouldn't feel this bad about this, right? That is not a totally apt sort of a suggestion in this case. Whatever the feeling got generated from whatever the event, that's totally already there. And the only way to move through them is to process them, but there's just so much that you can't really deal with them all at once. And what happens is that the feeling of the feelings happen in the sort of conscious part, right? You are aware of what you're feeling, and then it moves down to unconscious. So whatever the feelings that you can't feel in your consciousness at that given time, you just kind of store them, right? There was here, and then it just moves to the unconscious and say, okay. And then whatever is sitting there in the unconsciousness also move down into your body further. So this is like our system's sort of a coping mechanism or defense mechanism, and these feelings sit inside us unaware, because it's been below our awareness, waiting for the day when you come back and finally feel them, right? So that you can move on and you can integrate those feelings and move past the event. Except that we never do, right? So the longer we live, what happens is we get stuck with these emotions that were not processed, and you build a habit of storing these emotions. Emotions are like muscles in that if you're not used to feeling them, it becomes overwhelming and uncomfortable really right away. This can happen with conventionally uncomfortable feelings like grief and shame, as well as it can with things like joy too. I mean, I can attest that too much happiness overwhelms me, right? People cry for happiness too, and that is a sign saying that there's so much emotion happening that you feel overwhelmed. I don't know, I mean, if there's an unprocessed joy stuck in me, but it's certainly possible. But my point is that once you form a habit of going, ooh, this is a feeling that I'm bad at feeling, I don't want to feel it, I just stuff it down, right? And then the longer you live, you're just walking emotional baggage from all your past history. And this is the basis for which all our struggles and problems and obstacles are built upon. So what happens when these emotions or feelings are stuck inside is that because you were never able to move on from whatever happened, right? It forms a limiting belief, you might call it, or worldview, right? You might come out with certain beliefs about, oh, if this happens, then I will feel this, right? So, for example, I had this belief that I am undeserving of attention, and as I am, I could not expect anybody else to pay attention to me. I developed a coping mechanism to say either I have to be something so extraordinary, impressive that people will say, whoa, right, and pay attention to me, or I have to be so sacrificial, like a martyr, that people will have pity on me. Those are my sort of two coping mechanisms for this belief that I was undeserving of attention. And it's not the most important part to understand how you got that feeling, right, or belief. It's a worthy exploration, but that's not the most important part. I mean, I grew up with loving parents. I do know that there was stress in my life early on, like, when I was very young baby to, 3 to 5 years old kind of thing. Where my mother had too many people to take care of in the extended family, but I was not neglected, certainly, but I do think that I'm really sensitive person, so what might not affect another person may have affected me more, so I might have developed something that might be closer to a result of a neglect, even though I was not neglected, right? So that's a bit of like a detective work in terms of how it ended up inside me, but really, how it ended up inside me is useful and interesting to know, but it's not the point, right? So what happens in this case is that limited belief, forms a particular worldview in which I would look at every situation and go, oh, I'm being friends with this person, or I might be romantically attracted to this person. I better be either impressive or martyr in this situation so that I can get that attention I'm looking for. And I tell you, when I realized what was going on and I reflected upon my life, I have to say, and this is not a knock on any of my friends and family members, it's totally on me, but every relationship, friends, family, love, romantic situation, contain that sense of disappointment of showing up and not getting the attention that I was showing up to get. And I would feel let down, I feel disappointed. And that kind of pattern forms, it's basically your unconscious mind's way. In fact, you get drawn, you're attracted to the situations. Like you might, somebody like me will get attracted to people who are unable to emotionally be available. And that is your mind's way of saying, hey, I have this big emotional baggage stuck in here, and I want you to come visit me again so that we can move on. So I'm gonna, make myself get attracted to the situations where more of this feeling can be generated. But in reality, we keep encountering this pattern, but without this understanding, what we end up doing is we keep stuffing more and more of this same feeling, and the baggage gets bigger, right? And then it gets deeper into our bodies, and you know what? This unprocessed, feelings festering in your body. I really believe that it eventually develops into some kind of illness, right? So it is in our best interest to learn how to process or integrate these stuck feelings. So how do you deal with this emotional baggage or stuck feelings, right? There's no magic bullet. The only way to feel them, the only way to move through, the only way to process them is to feel them. Like the way out is through kind of thing. Where if you want to change that pattern, if I wanted to change that pattern of showing up and not receiving attention, the only way to change that fundamentally for good is to basically pay attention to the grief I have, the disappointment, and feel it. And feeling it means pay attention to the sensation of the feeling, which is very hard, obviously. And I spent many days crying, for example, in the last few months. And you might think it's odd for me to say this, but the crying is good. Like if you're crying, that means that you're actually feeling the stuck feelings. You won't be crying if you're not feeling it. And then although it is definitely not fun to cry of disappointment and grief, I knew that if I kept doing it, eventually my bag will get empty and change will result. So I just kind of hunkered down, and I had a long time in the last few months. So that's what I worked on. Is anytime, and I realize it might be hard to just kind of all of a sudden sit down and think about it. But when you have a baggage like this, you encounter other life situations that sort of makes you think about these feelings all the time anyway. So basically what I'm saying is, whatever upsetting things are going on in your life, what you want to do is each time you do encounter that bad feelings, instead of stuffing it down, distracting yourself, you sit and feel them. And if that means crying, or if that means punching the pillows, or drawing, or tearing paper, or burning something, right? Whatever it takes to fully embody and express that feeling, that's what you need to do. And it's definitely sort of like it gets worse before it gets better kind of thing. But that's what you gotta do to deal with this. Because not dealing with it is an awful choice. In my mind, once you understand these basics, I think you start seeing the dots connect, right? Where you start recognizing this in yourself, in people around you, in situations around the society, all the time, where people are sort of enamored or ingrained in a certain particular beliefs that you can tell it's based on their unprocessed stuck feelings. the implications in my mind are enormous, you know, with like healthcare and mental health and all the undesirable behaviors in the world, from racism to sexism to discriminations. I mean, all these things, I think, all kind of boils down to all people carrying stuck feelings, and they're just so stuck in that sort of unfortunate mindset based on the past experiences that they have not been able to move on from, right? So my goal is to use my platform to broadcast these messages, and in fact, I can tell you that all my songs that I write now have this kind of things all sort of planted within the song. And as you know, I explained in my last week's video that, you know, expressing compassion is one of my core values. It's something that when I do, I get tremendous energy and enjoyment out of. So working on this and promoting this understanding and being an example of somebody who's sort of used this idea to really transform my life is something that I feel very, very passionate about now. So I will, you know, plan to do more videos and more blog sort of centered around this area. There are just so many different ways to look at this one issue and how it applies to everything else. So if you follow me, that's, you know, the kind of journey that I intend to start from here on. Alright, but I know this video is getting long, so I'm going to call it a day today. Thanks again for watching. If you have any questions at all, please leave a comment and I'll do my best to answer. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff, and I'm very open. I try to be transparent about things that are happening in my life. And I'm exploring the idea of doing some kind of coaching as a service as well, so if you think that you're interested in that, please let me know. Okay? Alright, thanks again for watching. Have a good day. I'll see you next time.